I would like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Emily Stevens, and I call this regular board meeting of July 1st, 2026 to order. The time is 12:01. Opening items, Trustee Esparza Stafford, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I open 1.02, is there anybody who has not yet had an opportunity to fill out a public speaker's card? You can hand it in right up here, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and open 1.02, adoption of the agenda. Trustee Cavazos, would you please make the motion?
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Reference material has been added for item 2.09, employment agreement, Chief of School Police. Reference material has been added for item 2.16, employment agreement, Assistant General Counsel, Office of the General Counsel. Additional reference material has been added for item 2.13, resolution of intent to lease real property for the construction and operation multi-user telecommunications facility and notice inviting bid site number 454.01 food service warehouse. Additional reference material has been added for item 2.14, resolution of intent to lease real property for the construction and operation of multi-user telecommunications facility and notice inviting bid site number 434 West Career and Technical Academy.
Before I entertain a second for that motion, we did have a public comment and I just received it. Okay, Mr. Gomez, 1.02.
David Gomez, for the record, Nevada Peace Alliance president, father of 7 children, and also former presidents and deputy directors of many other organizations. But nevertheless, I just wanted to talk about transparency. I've said this last time in 1.02 or 1 or whatever it was. Transparency is the most important thing. So she says we want to adopt the agenda, we want to look at this, we want to look at that. Where is the transparency in this? There is no transparency. I read a summary on CCSD website on transparency. There's no transparency. I don't know who we're talking about. I don't know nothing about what we're saying. And when I ask for transparency and an engagement for transparency, I got 0. I've been doing this longer than a lot of people sitting in this room, not to disrespect them or disregard them, but nevertheless, transparency is important. I don't like hidden things. I don't like hidden agendas. And I don't like things to be out of place because this is wrong. Now, we're talking about adopting, accepting, and doing something on this consent agenda, and that's important. This is what you guys do. You got to adopt. You got to accept and amend or whatever you got to do. But you guys know just as much as me, sometimes we're left in the dark on transparency. Sometimes we're not given the truth on transparency. And I want to know who's going to be over my children in this school with transparency. And do not hide or close the door or shun away from me, because that's the wrong thing to do, because I'm very vocal. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Can I get a second? Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I second that motion.
We have a first and a second. Let's vote. Great. Motion passes. We move on now to the consent agenda. Before I can entertain a motion, we do have a few people for consent. So first we'll call up Ms. Binder.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert. As we're hiring our next chief of police, last week there were some conversations in the room after the meeting. So I just came back today to put that conversation on public record. I really think that we have an opportunity because unlike many school districts, we have our own police department, that we, starting a new relationship with a new chief of police, given the totality of how many schools we have, how many students we serve, and the things that go on, that this would be an ample opportunity for the board to bring forward some type of like citizen review committee, kind of like Metro has. But you guys could expand upon the types of issues that that committee reviews. As you guys know, we have a lot of interactions with our special education children, children that are entering other programs through our district for behaviors and divergence, things, you know. So we have a really great opportunity to kind of open that door, as we're always talking about transparency, to build a very lasting relationship with the new chief of police. Our last one was here for a very long time. Hopefully, the next one is too, but it is an opportunity, I think, for us to instill back into our families, our schools, our staff, and our students a lot of like law enforcement transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Bill Audette.
Good afternoon, President Stevens, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Ebert. My name is Bill Audette. I'm a member of WARJ, and I'm speaking as an individual on the consent agenda item 2.09, the employment agreement for the Chief of School Police. I would like to speak to the board and the superintendent about the process that resulted in the press release being the first time the public heard about this candidate. And at this point, the appointee may be more accurate as interviews have already been conducted. To her credits, Superintendent Ebert has made transparency and accountability touchstones of her superintendency. This district desperately needs those things, which is why this process feels like a betrayal of the trust being built. From what I've learned, the last full board heard about this process was that the hiring process was down to 12 candidates. The next thing the full board was aware of was the press release stating the name of the new chief of police. This means that the full board was rendered unable to fulfill core mechanisms of informed oversight in this decision, which also means that the trustees were unable to be accountable to their constituents in their oversight. Let's get some things on the table. Choosing a new chief of police is not a small business matter in this community. Let's be honest, that there are all kinds of issues for trustees and for the community that come with this. Avoiding controversy and appropriate struggle is not helpful, healthy, or courageous. It is an issue such as this one that can undo all the good things that have been accomplished so far under this superintendent. And frankly, with the risk of Black students being disproportionately impacted by any decision made here, the lack of full board and community engagement might be considered egregious. And that's only the first issue. The second issue is tucking this very important laden decision into the consent agenda. First, we have a problem that our board president and superintendent would ever think this was a good decision. Second, we now have a politically charged situation in which the full board and the community may have no opportunity to offer their input until after this candidate becomes a hire. Also, scheduling this item at noon on a workday prevents many people from attending. What might have been thought of as egregious now has the look of political maneuvering by board leadership and the superintendent. If we're to be a destination district, it will be important that accountability and transparency are what will create it. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. David Kelly. After David will be Terrellyn Thompson.
Hello, Madam President, fellow board members, Superintendent Ebert. I'm speaking on agenda item 2.06. I'm David Kelly, and I'm proud to say I'm entering my 27th year of teaching, all for the district. I'm the current theater task force chair for the district as well, and the theater and film educator at Arborview High School. I've been involved for over a decade in bringing Nevada theater programs to national standards by helping to initiate and write the Nevada State Theater Technology Standards, as well as adapting the National Core Arts Standards for Nevada. I'm overjoyed that CCSD is listening and helping to ensure that all our theater students are working with and producing shows with equipment that they will see in the industry upon graduation. I request that you would incorporate the input of those of us who are teaching, directing, and producing shows in our CCSD theaters in your efforts to ensure proper industry standard equipment is amongst the refurbishment. In recent years, a big mistake was made when I wasn't consulted about the LED lighting install in the auditorium at Arborview High School. Once things were completed, the company installed the lamps incorrectly, and thus there were 3 now permanently damaged lighting outlets in the auditorium. In addition, the company didn't understand that the auditorium lights were built to operate from our theater dimmer unit instead of a general breaker unit, which now means the auditorium lights are shorting out and flickering constantly. As the Theater Task Force Chair for CCSD, I take it as part of my new role to assist you with this refurbishment as I can. Thank you. I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you. Up next, Terrellyn.
Terrellyn Thompson, high school theater teacher and secretary of NEASN. I'm going to start off by saying thank you. When I got up to speak about the theater CTE program in May, I honestly thought that they were going to be words that were immediately forgotten once the meeting was adjourned. I was surprised when my comments were passed on to the chief of facilities, and he contacted me a few days later. He assured me that they were working on a way for schools who could not afford to upgrade theater technology to be able to apply. I still did not fully believe that this would ever come to fruition, as theater is often overlooked when it comes to money. When I found out from Superintendent Ebert that this would be an agenda item on today's meeting, I'm not going to lie, I was shocked, but I was excited. To have the opportunity to upgrade equipment in my theater means that our students will finally be able to learn the technology that is being used in the professional world. This will allow them to be able to leave high school and step into working in the professional theater or a venue in Las Vegas. But I stand here before you with one more request, of course. When technology is purchased for a school, the bottom line is always money. Almost every time something is purchased for theater outside of the theater teacher actually putting in the order, no one in the theater world is ever consulted about the best equipment to buy within the budget they are trying to use. We have a wonderful set of theater teachers with expertise, but we also have an amazing theater parapro that is employed with CCSD named Paul Chadwick. He is a master at taking a budget and getting you the best equipment for theater that money can buy. He also has contacts with every theater company that sells theater equipment in Las Vegas. So I'm asking you to ensure that when schools are approved to utilize this money, that you allow the school to consult with Paul Chadwick or someone with comparable experience to find equipment that will work best in our space at the best price. This will ensure that we purchase equipment that will work the best in our theater and allow students to learn on equipment that they will see in the professional world. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment for consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve. Trustee Biasotti.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Great. Do I have a second? Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I am excited to second that motion.
Awesome. Let's vote. Motion passes. Trustee Dominguez, please read the warrants.
Thank you, Madam President. Ratified warrants as listed in bills payable, transmittal, and board memorandum number 1, 26, and 27 in the total amount of $147,203,226.06. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open 3.01, has anybody not filled out a public comment card? If you would like to, public comment cards are in the front. Great. Okay, I'm no longer accepting public comment cards for 3.01, and I will turn the floor over to the district for presentation.
Madam President, I'm sorry, it's in the queue. I just wanted to recognize, thank you all very much for approving Jeff Clark as our new chief of police. He is here in the audience with his wife and his family. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that, and gratitude for your leadership in this process as well. Jeff, please stand.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer. I am joined by Christopher Carroll, our Director of Science, Health, Physical Education, and Driver Education. On Thursday, May 28th, 2026, the Sex Education Advisory Committee, recommending committee, met and recommended that the Board of School Trustees appoint applicants as members of the Sex Education Advisory Committee. At this time, I'll hand over the presentation of names to Mr. Carroll.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, Christopher Carroll. As noted, the Sex Education Advisory Committee, recommending committee, met and recommended that the Board of School Trustees appoint applicants as members of the Sex Education Advisory Committee. From the profession or occupation of medicine, nursing, the recommending committee recommends Catherine McCray, residing in District F. From the profession or occupation of religion, the recommending committee recommends Rodney Pepping, residing in District G. Per the Sex Education Advisory Committee bylaws, Section 2A3, these positions are a 2-year term based on the 9-month school calendar, and their term will expire June 30th, 2028. Thank you for this opportunity to share the Sex Education Advisory Committee recommending committee recommendations. At this time, we will take any questions.
Trustee Biasotti.
Thank you, Madam President. I did need some clarity. If we were to not approve any of the applicants at this moment, what would happen in the future? Would the application process reopen?
To my knowledge, in conversation with General Counsel, and they would need to weigh in if there were any shifts in that. Since the board, the Sex Education Advisory Committee is not complete, changing the application would advantage or disadvantage some folks that are on it versus not on it. That's my understanding, is that they would not request a change to the application unless their number of SEAC members were complete.
If I can add, Trustee Biasotti's, Dustin Mansell for the record. If we do not have approval for these two candidates, our Sex Education Advisory Committee would be able to continue, but then we would still reopen the application process to fill these positions.
Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Mansell and a team. Did we have more than one applicant for each of these positions in nursing and religion?
Trustee Cavazos, thank you for the question. Dustin Mansell for the record. No, there was one applicant per opening. So there was one
category.
applicant, correct, for the medicine and nursing and one applicant for the religion.
Okay. And I had a follow-up question. So it's a kind of one that we already went over in the briefing, but that the public has not heard. Are either of these two candidates employed by Clark County School District? And if so, in what capacity? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for the question, Christopher Carroll, for the record. Yes, the Catherine McCray, the applicant seeking appointment to the Sex Education Advisory Committee for medicine nursing, is a registered nurse and pediatric nurse, a practitioner working in CCSD.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was all I had, Madam President.
Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. My question is, the committee, these were unanimous votes for each member, correct?
Trustee Zamora, that is correct.
Okay. And then I had a follow-up to Trustee Cavazos' question about the employment requirements. Can you run through me what the bylaws say? Is that a possibility?
Trustee Zamora, I can answer that question. Dustin Mansell for the record. If you are applying for a position on SEAC and you are recommended and the board votes to recommend that candidate to sit on the committee, they represent that position. So in the past, we have had teachers that have applied for both the teacher position, but they were also parents of students that attend a Clark County School District school, and they applied for that position as well. And they were appointed as a representative of a parent. So each time that individual would speak, they would say, as a parent, and then they would make sure that they were in that role within the committee.
Trustee Esparza-Stoffergen.
So I have two questions. One is, how many times have we flown the openings for these two roles?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Esparza-Stroffingen and Christopher Carroll for the record. The positions fly anytime there's a vacancy. When we did the last application and that approval process, I believe was October, is when the Sex Education Advisory Committee recommending committee met, and those recommendations were brought forward to you all and approved in January. We did not have someone that was appointed by the approved by the Sex Education Advisory Committee recommending committee for these two positions. There were applicants, but they did not select any of those applicants to move forward.
How long has religion been vacant?
And the religion position, I believe, has been vacant for over a year. I'm going to guess off the top of my head the last 2 cycles, so 2 years. It's been challenging finding full applicants.
That was why I was asking, that these are voluntary positions. We are not getting candidates. These are the only 2 individuals that want, and this is a unanimous recommendation by the committee. My second question is, what is the function and role of this advisory committee? Because I know that there's another arm, so if there could be clarity on that.
Thank you for the question, Trustee. Christopher Carroll for the record. Nevada Revised Statute, this is 389.036, requires a Sex Education Advisory Committee. And so the folks that are on this committee, their sole purpose is to review any instructional materials related to the sex education standards. These are standards that are approved at the state level. When they review those materials, they are either recommending them that, yes, they should be approved by the board, and then that becomes a board item for you all to agree with that recommendation or reject it. Or they look at those materials and they say, nope, these really don't meet the standard, it's not the level, and they don't submit them as a board item for you all to review, and they never actually move past that point. The process within the revised statute is that educators wanting to, while teaching in any of the sex education standards, are required to only use materials that were approved, and that final say of approval is with this board.
Thank you for the clarity. And I know that there are still questions, but I'd be ready to make a motion, Madam President.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. And actually, Trustee Esparza-Stroffengen's question covered most of it. But again, to clarify, these applications are vetted by the committee, by the recommending committee. And again, the committee members that we're voting on today, they are the ones who review the curriculum, because there still seems to be, because their names of the committees are so similar.
Thank you for the question, Christopher Carroll, for the record. So there are 2 committees. There's the Sex Education Advisory Committee. Their sole purpose is to review instructional materials that teachers would be able to use if they, 1, recommend them, and 2, submit it as a board item you all approve that those materials could be used. How do folks get on the Sex Education Advisory Committee? They submit an application. When that application window is open, that is usually open for 30 days. Then a Sex Education Advisory Committee recommending committee. Those are folks that are appointed by you all. Each voting district member has an appointee that serves on the committee to review those applications, verify and check the level of expertise appropriate for the category. As Dr. Mansell mentioned, a parent or a teacher, counselor is on there, medicine, nursing, religion. And they make the recommendation of the pool of applicants, this is the person that we think should be on the Sex Education Advisory Committee. And that brings us to where we are right now. These are the 2 folks that were recommended for you all to approve or reject.
Thank you so much. So basically, the recommendations right now, they were vetted by that committee before it even got to us, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And with that, before we entertain a motion, we have 4 for public comment. You have to forgive me, the writing was challenging. Is it Tama? Tammy? Morns? Morris? Is that? If this isn't the item, is it this item or is it something else? Non-agenda item? A non-agenda item, is that what you meant? Okay, that's okay. That's okay. I'll call you up at the end, okay? No worries, no worries. And just for my edification, is it Tama? Tamara. All right, you got it. No worries. Okay, next, Ms. Atterbury. I have you for 3.01. Okay. Okay. What about Ms. Ivanov? Same thing? Non-agenda? Okay. I don't have you on here.
No, so for some clarification, there were no agendas available for the public when we showed up like normal, and it took 5 staff members for me to figure out that it's put now in a binder.
Counsel.
So just, so there should be a lot of confusion about.
Thank you for the clarification. Katrine, did you want 3.01 or was it 4.01? This is sex, I know. Which item? This one is sex ed, or did you want to talk about non-agenda items? Okay, good to know, thank you. What about you, Mr. Gomez?
I was the same thing. I was in the
4.01?
yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Everything was
Let's
in Spanish.
add it.
I have glaucoma and I couldn't.
Okay, we'll talk. Thank you. All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion for 3.01. Trustee Barone.
I would like to actually second the motion that Ramona had put forth.
Oh. Trustee Esparza, stop again.
I'm happy to make a motion to accept 3.01 Sex Education Advisory Committee, the request for the approval of the appointeds.
Trustee Barone,
Second.
let's vote. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to 3.02, Clark County School District Policy 6110.
Thanks. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer. I am joined by Elena Kreiner-Wilson, our Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division, and Robert Jones, Director of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. Today, we are providing notice of intent to amend Clark County School District Policy 6110, School Day. Policy 6110 was originally adopted by the Board of School Trustees in 1981 and was last revised in 1983. The proposed amendments will align the policy with current district practices and the State of Nevada Department of Education Guidance Memorandum 26-06 dated March 13th, 2026. It is important to note that the proposed amendments to Policy 6110 will not impact our current instructional school day, as Clark County School District already meets the minimum instructional minutes required by the Nevada Department of Education. Before we begin, I would like to thank our Principal Feedback Committee, our region leadership, and members of the CCSD Executive Leadership Team for their collaboration and support in developing the recommendations for both this policy and the forthcoming proposed amendments to Regulation 6110. Madam President, at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Mrs. Kreiner-Wilson, who will review the proposed amendments to Policy 6110.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, for the record, Elena Kreiner-Wilson. The reference material for item 3.02, Notice of Intent for Clark County School District Policy 6110 School Day, outlines the proposed revisions to the policy. First, we are proposing revisions to modernize and streamline the policy language. The updated policy affirms the district's commitment to ensuring adequate instructional time for all students and clarifies that administrative regulations and procedures will specify the details and length of the instructional day in accordance with applicable law. Second, we have removed language regarding temporary alterations to the regular school day. This provision is more appropriately addressed in the regulation and operational procedures rather than board policy, allowing the district to respond efficiently to changing circumstances while maintaining compliance with applicable requirements. Finally, we have retained and renumbered the provision, emphasizing that unnecessary interruptions to classroom instruction will be avoided. This language reinforces the district's commitment to maximizing instructional time and supporting student learning by minimizing disruptions during the school day. Thank you for the opportunity to present these proposed amendments to Policy 6110 School Day. At this time, we welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Great. Do we have public comment on 3.02? No, we do not. I would entertain a motion. Trustee Biassatti.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to adopt Agenda Item 3.02, Notice of Intent, Policy 6110.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Trustee Zamora.
I would second that motion.
Thank you. Let's vote. Great. Motion passes. Before I open 3.03, has everybody had a chance to fill out public comment cards? Anybody? Okay, I'm no longer accepting cards for 3.03, and I will pass it over to you, Mr. Mansell.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert, again, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer. And again, I am joined by Elena Kreiner-Wilson, our Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division, and Robert Jones, our Director of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. Today, we are providing notice of intent to amend Clark County School District Regulation 6110, School Day. Regulation 6110 was originally adopted by the Board of School Trustees in 1963 and was last revised in 1983. Like Policy 6110, the proposed amendments to Regulation 6110 will align the regulation with current district practices and the State of Nevada Department of Education Guidance Memorandum 26.06, dated March 13th, 2026. Again, it is important to note that the proposed amendments to Regulation 6110 will not impact our current instructional school day, as Clark County School District already meets the minimum instructional minutes required by the Nevada Department of Education. So at this time, I will turn over the presentation to Mr. Jones, who will review the proposed amendments to Regulation 6110, School Day.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, Robert Jones. The reference material for items 3.03, Notice of Intent for Clark County School District Regulation 6110, School Day, outlines the proposed revisions to the regulation. First, we are proposing revisions to align the regulation with current Nevada Department of Education requirements and terminology regarding instructional time. The revised regulation establishes minimum daily instructional minute requirements by grade band, provides annual instructional minute requirements for schools operating under alternative calendars, and clarifies instructional minute requirements for high school credit-bearing courses. The revisions also update language regarding the Board of School Trustees' authority to establish school schedules within state requirements. Second, we have added provisions that that clearly define what constitutes instructional time and passing time for purposes of meeting state instructional minute requirements. The regulation specifies that passing time between academic activities qualifies as instructional time, while lunch periods, open or unassigned periods, extracurricular activities, and study halls that do not provide daily direct instruction or high-impact tutoring do not count toward required instructional minutes. The amendments also clarify that passing time does not contribute to the instructional minutes required for high school credit hours. Third, we are updating the emergency and special conditions section to reflect current administrative practices. The proposed language requires advance approval from the superintendent of schools or designee for irregular dismissals and continues to require advance notification to parents and guardians when dismissal schedules are altered. Finally, we have retained and revised the time to teach provisions that support uninterrupted classroom instruction. The regulation continues to emphasize that maintenance activities, announcements, and special events should be scheduled in a manner that minimizes disruptions to the instructional school day, reinforcing the district's commitment to maximizing teaching and learning time. Thank you for the opportunity to present these proposed amendments to Regulation 6110, School Day. At this time, we welcome any questions from the board.
I'll open it up to my colleagues. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the briefing that we had because I asked my questions, even though they were operational. If there were no any other questions, I'd like to make a motion. Oh, a bunch of people popped in. Never mind.
Well, let's see. Trustee Cavazos, are you wanting to second, or do you have?
I'm wanting to second.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 3.03.
Trustee Cavazos?
I would like to second that motion.
Great, let's vote. Awesome, motion passes. Very quickly, Miss.
not so fast.
Superintendent would like to say
Not so
something.
fast. Yeah. The audience is wondering what's going on. So I have had, and many of you have had the honor of working alongside Dr. Dustin Mansell for many, many years. This is his last school board meeting. And so I tried every which way that I knew. But I know he would like to take some vacations and enjoy his life. But you've promised to come, on the record, can I have that you're going to come back and work with us?
I will definitely fight for this district, yes.
Okay, good. So I hope that at the end of the meeting, we'll be able to take a picture with Dr. Mansell and his recognition, but in sincere appreciation for your dedication of service, exceptional leadership, and steadfast commitment to students, families, and the employees of the Clark County School District. There are other things here, but you not single-handedly, because you had a lot of people show up to your retirement party, but you and a team showed up for children that people did not believe, adults did not believe could be successful, and you lifted them up. You changed the school day, what you did, you made sure that educators had the resources that they needed to lift our children up. And just thank you for showing up every single day to support all children. I know they're trustees, yes.
Thank you. Trustee Cavazos wanted to say something.
I just want to say you will be missed. And I know we always say people are not irreplaceable. I believe you are. And I just want to say that. And I thought you looked a little happier than usual today. So anyway, we appreciate everything that you've done. And again, as our superintendent just said, working for all the children, and your presence and your absolute dedication to your job will be sorely missed. We will track you down. Thank you.
And with that, we will open before I do, public comment cards? No? Yes? Please take it to the front. Joe, is it for 3.04? Okay, great. With that, we'll go ahead and open 3.04, 2025 to 2026 Superintendent Formative Evaluation. It'll be the evaluation procedures, performance terms, and cutoff scores, discussion and possible action on the superintendent evaluation procedures and adoption of the performance terms and cutoff scores for the 2025 to 2026 formative evaluation of superintendent of schools. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Alsbury.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. And so, as President said, we'll be reviewing the superintendent evaluation process and procedures through the balanced governance process that the board uses as their governance model. This one, we're looking at the 2025-2026, so this past year's evaluation of the superintendent. In the superintendent evaluation, there is a cycle that you can see on the screen that we go through, the board goes through for the evaluation. Just to put some timeline to this, the board has already been at work on the evaluation process. It truly is a process that runs through the entire year, in some cases even prior to that year. As you can see, November 7th, 2025, the board began discussions and trainings on adopting process and criteria for evaluation. Portions of that evaluation process was by consensus was agreed to at that time, but we're coming formally today. So you see the today's date there for the approval of those processes and criteria, the complete processes and criteria. Also, the board has engaged already in a process where they came to consensus after some discussion on areas, that is, goals and targets from your district strategic goal document. That would be a matter of focus. So just so for the public that are listening, just to note that there are in your district strategic plan, there are many, 40, 50, 60, very frequently, specific goal targets that the superintendent has that they're responsible for. And so this is an unreasonable number to expect that the superintendent is going to put extreme focus and resources on 50 or 60 items. Also, district strategic plans run over multiple years. So in some cases, some of those items have already been addressed in previous years, and so naturally you want to focus in on things that are more current. Well, that process already took place November 7th, 2025, and those targeted items were selected by the board through consensus. In addition to that, already occurring on April the 9th, in the board meeting, the superintendent, through this evaluation process, presented information to the board that addressed progress that was made on these selected goals and targets. And this was data that had been identified that the superintendent would bring to indicate the progress on these goals and targets. So that has already taken place. Now, I'll note too that, again, for the sake of the listening public, that the board, through the balanced governance model that they're using, actually has agendized these areas, these goals and targets throughout the entire year, and they are presented with this data as the data becomes available from the superintendent and their staff in multiple meetings throughout the entire year. So the mid-year check is oftentimes a summarization or a wrap-up of things that often the board has already seen and heard and received reports on in previous board meetings. But it gives them an opportunity, the board and the superintendent, to make any mid-year corrections or changes that might become necessary. So now we're to the latter portion, the final portion of this past year's evaluation of the superintendent, and that whole process will begin formally in September. So in September, typically toward the end of September, the superintendent would then bring all of the data that's available to show you an overview of the progress that's been made on all of the goals and targets that you had selected as a board. As soon as that information is provided to you as board members, you've got everything you need in front of you to make your evaluation. I'll be watching, and I'll immediately send you, the board members, individually a rubric, which it's been made available in the documents for tonight's meeting. And that rubric will provide you the opportunity of rating the superintendent on the strategic goals and targets that you had selected for focus, as well as an opportunity to provide commendations to the superintendent, written, and then also an opportunity to provide written recommendations for growth or improvement to the superintendent. There's a process that I'll go through here in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but that culminates the final process in the production of a single superintendent report, a single evaluation report from all of the board members, which is delivered in November at a board meeting. This slide here is just a repeat of what I've just gone through in just a single slide for your convenience. No changes, though, in the timeline. Now, one of the things that I mentioned already, so I won't spend much time on this, is that the board did go through a process of focusing in on targets. And generally, the way that works, just again for the public that are listening, of these 40 or 50 targets, I first ask the superintendent if there are 10 to 12 targets that they believe would be the most critical for that year, that upcoming year, for them to focus in on for the district. And I mentioned again that sometimes these are more timely and have become critical. And so they make these recommendations. When we go through the process, though, for the board, that although the board knows what these 10 to 12 recommendations are from the superintendent, all of the targets, every one of them is presented before the board, and each of the board members has an opportunity to select any and all of the targets for the superintendent to focus in on for that year. In this case, I recommend that the board select 4 or 5 major targets for the superintendent to focus in on for that given year. So that's how that process took place. And these are those targets that the board chose for the superintendent to focus in on. Now, one of the things, I'll give you a minute, folks that are looking at this or reading this. One of the things that's unique about the evaluation process that the board has chosen to utilize, to consider tonight, is that this is not a typical standard superintendent evaluation approach. The normal evaluation approach would be typically a generic focus on a group of generic categories that the board would rate the superintendent on. The typical is that there'll be a category on leadership. The superintendent's an effective leader. So I strongly agree, I'm neutral, I strongly disagree. Another would be, does the superintendent work well with the board? Would be another typical one. The thing that you'll note if you look at these models that's missing is that there's nothing connected to the strategic goals, the specific goals of the district for kids. And so it is actually literally the case that a superintendent in that kind of a system could come out with a very good evaluation. Yeah, they're a good communicator, they work with the board well and all that, and yet we made no progress on our goals. Well, the balanced governance approach is an approach that believes in something called informed oversight. Those are important words, that the board first be informed so that they can make decisions. And then the second word, in this case, oversight, means that they actually are going to oversee whether progress has in fact been made for the kids of the district over that year. And so the evaluation, just as an umbrella statement, is designed around the board evaluating the superintendent on progress that has been made or not made on those goals. So you'll notice that a boilerplate evaluation is not sent to the board members. The evaluation tool is specifically designed for the district's targets that they have selected. So it's focused in on that. This, by the way, fits with research that shows that the most effective districts, the most effective boards, that is, they govern and evaluate with a laser-like focus on looking at how students are doing, the performance of the district. So this just goes naturally with that. So there is, like I mentioned, an evaluation rubric that's been provided in the materials for this topic. I will note that to the board members that this rubric, although you're seeing a paper copy in front of you, when it's actually sent to you there at the end of September, it'll be online. It'll be in electronic format, not in a paper and pencil format. So there's a couple of areas that the board is going to want to make a decision on or approve, possibly take action on tonight. The first one is, what should the terms be, the performance designation the actual words. And the second thing is the cutoff scores. And so it is my recommendation that the board utilize the terms that I've indicated up here on the screen. This model of evaluation is all about growth, okay? How can the superintendent improve what they're doing? And so the terms distinguished, proficient, developing, and growth needed are specifically selected to fit with the growth mindset model of evaluation. So my recommendation is that the board use those terms in the evaluation. The second topic is, where did you cut it off? The board is going to give a rating to the superintendent in the evaluation form. The rating would be growth needed would have a numerical value of 1. Distinguished would have a numerical value of 4. So the maximum number you could get when we average all 7 board members' ratings would be a 4. That'd be it was a perfect score from everyone. And then all the way down to a 1 would be the absolute lowest score that could be given in terms of an average. So the question becomes, where do we cut it off? There are, the numbers that I have up there are numbers that have been used in the state of Nevada as cutoff points. It is my recommendation, and I'm going to go to the next slide, that you make a modification in those cutoff points, those cutoff score for the superintendent's evaluation. And I'll give one quick explanation, and then I'm going to move on from it because this can get get into the weeds really fast. The reason, if you wonder about the cutoff scores, of 7 board members, if we looked at those previous cutoff scores, if 4 of the board members gave the superintendent a distinguished rating, and 3 of the board members gave the superintendent a proficient rating under the kind of state cutoffs, that superintendent would receive a rating of proficient, even though the majority of the board said they are distinguished. So the number change that you see up here, which is just a slight change, but the number change on cutoffs would ensure that the majority rating that the board presented would be the one that the superintendent received. Okay, so if 4 said distinguished and 3 said proficient, in this rating cutoff, they would be in fact distinguished, 4 to 3. Okay? Now, this here is a more specific, detailed overview of what happens in September once the superintendent has presented a summary of progress on the goals for that year. And you can see that's the first item on this timeline. I mentioned already that I would then immediately send the evaluation tool, which is the rubric that you've been provided, to each of the trustees. You would be given 2 weeks to respond to that, to give your ratings, your commendations, and your recommendations for growth. I will be available in case there's any assistance that may be needed, specifically for writing a recommendation of growth statement. That's what we're asking the board members to do. Some board members may not be familiar with a growth statement, or, in other words, we're asking for the board to identify actions that the superintendent should consider to improve at what they do in their job. And that's what we find to be the most helpful for superintendents. Just critiques, we don't like how you did this year, don't give the superintendent really any direction on how they can make changes. And so we're trying to be sure that the board has the opportunity to really give some clear directions on improvement. Those recommendations of growth, I'll receive them, and if we do the math, there's 7 board members, there's 5 different areas of focus, so it's going to be very common for us to see 35, 40, 50, 60 different, that'd be natural, 1 or 2 remarks from each of the board members, 11, okay. Thank you. We would have an enormous number of recommendations for growth. It would be overwhelming, right? No executive should be expected to look at 50 or 60 recommendations. Plus, those recommendations could be contradictory to each other. So what does the superintendent do with that? So because of that, we'll go through a secondary process. I'll take those recommendations of growth. First, I'll make sure that they are written as recommendations for growth. That's part of the process. I will make them anonymous because we want the board to rate these comments not based on the trustee who gave the comment, but on the strength of the comment itself. That will be a rating form that will go back to the trustees. They'll individually rate what they think should be included in the final superintendent evaluation document, the final report. We'll take that, we'll establish what was the consensus of the board in terms of what remarks or what recommendations for growth should go into their report, their final evaluation. And that will go into the evaluation report. I'll put that together. I will meet out of courtesy in a Zoom virtual meeting between myself, the board president, and superintendent, just prior to, again, following all of the rules and all of the timelines and dates for OPM. I will share the results of that evaluation with the superintendent so that they're not just seeing it when the board meeting occurs. And then I'll immediately provide that to each of the trustees as well. And then finally, in the board meeting in November, the report would be presented. Okay. So those are the processes. Now, one of the couple of things, and then I'm finished with this, really one more main item, and that is just an understanding that I'll be sending the emails for each of these rating forms and individual rubrics. Evaluations will be coming from me to the trustee. That information will come back to me through an online survey tool, which provides the opportunity for anonymous response. And then I will take that compiled summary data, that is the compiled ratings data, and also the consensus around the recommendations for growth, and that's what will go into the report. That report is then what I provide to the board, the superintendent and the board for their evaluation. But the raw data and the identification of the raw data is something that I will keep and that I will keep private for the evaluation process. We find this is the most effective. The board members can be completely honest and forthright, and also the evidence is provides a consensus of the board. Again, remember that one of the keys to this process is that it's not effective to provide 7 evaluations to the superintendent, some of which could be contradictory, and then have them, good luck with that, do with it what you will. But instead, and this fits with balanced governance precepts, that we want to come to a consensus as a board to give clear direction to the superintendent in the evaluation. And that is the process. So I'll turn it over now to the president.
Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Alsbury. I'd like to remind my colleagues that this is for the 2025 to 2026 school year. Our next item will be for the current school year, 26 to 27. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. One, I just want to express my gratitude to this team. For the public, it has been a journey for us. We are responsible mainly for 3 things, and this is one of them that, as a team, we had not tackled for the public. And so I am super excited. As you can see, it's a journey for us to get there, and part of it was adopting balanced governance. So here's my question, Dr. Alsbury, is one, under balanced governance, there are 7 voting trustees, and we have 4 appointed. So in balanced governance, does the entire 11, or is it just the 7? My second question has to do with just a statement. I know that you, under balanced governance, the training this is not a got you moment. That's not going to help our one employee to grow. And so in the statements that you will consolidate and make sure that it's consensus, it really is to help the individual to continue to be, in this case, her best. And that's what we want. There is a tremendous turnover of superintendents. It's especially, there is high accountability, but there's also the vision for that person to grow. So my question is, and under balanced governance, is it all 11, or is it the 7 voting members that participate?
Yeah, my recommendation is that it be the 7 voting members that do the evaluation. That's my understanding. Under balanced governance, your situation here at Clark County is unique. And so certainly I'd be open to a conversation if the board had a desire to do something different. But my general recommendation would be, it seems to me that it should be the voting members of the board. That's just my viewpoint. And the second thing I'll say that, yes, and just a piece of information, the current national average for superintendent longevity in districts of this size is less than 2 years. And what we find, though, is that superintendents that stay longer, that you can keep in a district more consistently, is directly correlated to better performance by the district. So that rapid turnover has not been helpful to the kids in those districts. Yeah.
My follow-up, Madam President, is since this is a new process for us as a team, my question is, at the end, do we as a team vote, and I don't know if this is who this question is addressed to, it may not be you, Dr. Alsbury, but do we vote to accept the performance evaluation of our superintendent?
Yeah, generally the answer I would say is no, because you've had 3 in the process that I just outlined. You've had actually 3 different opportunities to come to consensus around the evaluation tool. And so thus it's the whole group that has decided what the areas of growth should be, for example, and it would be really, it would fight against the process and introduce an opportunity for an individual board member to try and press into a personal point that isn't shared by the full board, to then kind of reverse the process and go back to a debate about each individual item. So we intentionally provide 3 different opportunities for the full board to give their input. So by the time the report is done, it is actually a reflection of what you have chosen for that superintendent. Yeah.
Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, this is kind of surprising to me what Trustee Bustamante Adams brought up. Refresh my memory, Dr. Alsbury, when we did the self-reflection, the self-evaluation, was it only 7 voting trustees who did that self-reflection, or was it all 11?
I think we decided that all 11 would do the board evaluation part.
Right,
That's
the
what
board
you're talking
evaluation.
about, yeah. Yeah.
And so we've had a kind of a long and diverse, complicated journey involving into a hybrid board, from 7 elected trustees to 7 voting, and they will have the vote on July 1st, 2027. That's already been decided. So I'm a little bit puzzled, and I'm not going to ask board counsel, she's smiling at me, I'm not going to ask board counsel to weigh in right now, because I think it's going to take a little bit more discussion and legal, shall we say, digging deep here into this. But something that I absolutely would not understand at this point is that once we are approved and we're able to get to a point where the 4 appointed trustees are responsible for showing up for all briefings, for all trainings, for all meetings, for all work sessions, and being able to make a motion and be able to second a motion and be able to discuss all things on the dais, it would seem to me that this would be almost illegal. I don't know if that's the right word. No, Mahogany's going no. It would be almost ludicrous. It would be non-representative to have them been a part of all of that. And so I just want to put on the record that I would be opposed to that, and that that would be an evaluation that would be completely unfair to our superintendent, who is very open to basically communicating and listening to all 11 of us. She never, ever says, I can't talk to you, or I can't interact with you, or I can't give you any information because you're an appointed trustee. So I just want to put that on the record, that this is a very muddy ground. This is a deep, dark rabbit hole that we would be going down if we choose to go in that direction. So I just wanted to put that on the record, and Mahogany, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and could I just add that I kind of hesitated on my response because I think everything you said, Trustee Cavazos, is true. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a contract expert. I don't, those are things that would need to be decided based upon all of those things, on what is and isn't appropriate, as well as the board's interest. Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Stoffergen.
This is news to the appointed trustees. We had no knowledge that we would not be included in the evaluation process. So it's very disappointing. I will speak as an individual, as the amount of hours and time that we put in to represent in this position. I'd like to know, because you are very familiar with consulting across different districts, what does the research say when we look at this could potentially create regression for our board, who has made much progress in representation, and because the law is specific about giving municipalities some input and some representation. Just curious about the research. And then I do have a second question.
Yeah, and again, I want to clarify that I think either approach would be fine according to balanced governance. So let me say that. I think there's some questions, some contractual and legal questions that need to be answered, and the board needs to make a decision. So I want to make that clear, okay? There is no data that I know of, no research that I know of, because you are truly unique. There are boards in the northeastern United States that are larger boards, but those are appointed. Those members are appointed, and typically they have voting. They can vote. So this is a unique situation to have appointed members who cannot vote. And so there isn't really any data that I know of anyway that would answer that question for us in terms of a precedent.
And I appreciate you saying that it's really our decision as a collective body. So I think that's something that we should definitely visit. So again, there is no research that says that we should not be included when we are in everything else and do the work as the same as an elected. And we'll have a vote in the future. My question is this. On slide where it shows the 5 goals, I really appreciate the focus, and you mentioned by talking about we're really making sure that this evaluation is based on student performance. It really is about that. But on the last goal, on goal 5, that particular, those metrics and measures and those goals have not been established. So could you go into a little bit more detail about the fact that when I think about the last strategic plan that we had, it was very ambitious prior to this superintendent. And so my question is, with that last bullet, can you give us some specifics and examples and details so that we don't maybe repeat trying to track and measure 87 pages worth of goals?
Yeah, thank you. My recommendation for district strategic goals that have been effective is first that you stick to 5, seems like a comfortable number of broad goals that you focus in on. Underneath each of those, I think targeted outcomes, I would say 3 or 4 targeted outcomes. So that those are the kinds of strategic goals that seem to work for districts. Now, one of the reasons that we get into district plans that are much, more expansive than that is confusion, in my opinion, confusion between what is a goal. And so for me, a lot of district strategic plans that I see will provide a laundry list of activities that the district will engage in order to achieve a goal. So if your goal is to improve communication with the community, between the community and the district, in my opinion, that's a goal, to improve communication. You could have 20 different things that the superintendent is going to try to do, activities to make improvements on communication. But you as a board should be evaluating on the goal, the one goal, not did we do the 20 things. Because the truth is you could do all 20 things and communication still could be bad. And so you as a board are simply saying, did we make progress or did we not make progress? So that's first thing. Also, activities that you engage in to try and achieve a goal can vary. You can try things that don't work. You can have new things pop up that you think, oh, if we do this, that'll help us a lot. And you need to give the superintendent the flexibility to be able to ebb and flow with that, to do whatever it takes to modify the activities as the year goes on as well, in order to get the goal met, get from point A to point B. Finally, I'd say that the other thing that's critical in district strategic goals is that there's an identification, which again would be provided from the superintendent on each of those goals. Let's take the example I gave on communication goal. What data are we going to look at to determine whether progress has in fact been made on that? And again, I see in a lot of districts, the data measures are actually the achievement of an activity. So like, for example, they'll say, well, yes, we improved communication because we added a website, an email on a website that the public could write in and give us their input. So we did it. And I would contend that no, that is not telling you whether communication improved or not. That was an activity that you attempted. And so as a board, you shouldn't be evaluating based upon whether things were done or not done. Instead, you should say what actual data, that is community surveys, et cetera, that indicates that we are improving in communication. That'd be an example of, I think, a legitimate piece of data that you would look at for improvement. So those are the elements that I see in effective strategic goal documents.
Thank you. I do want to remind my colleagues just to keep us on track here. While Trustee Bustamante Adams' question was very valid, and I'm really glad that she brought it up, it does sound like something that we need to have with legal. And so this particular item is specifically around these procedures, and then what we have to vote on are the terms and the cutoff scores. So I just want to keep that in mind. I do think that your question is going to be something that is discussed more in length with legal. So thank you for bringing it up. But for the sake of staying on track, I want to make sure that we continue talking about these procedures, cutoff scores, and terms. With that, Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to just give some history. For those who missed it, back in November 7th to be exact, is when we had our board retreat where we just narrowed down, I think it was a list of 12 targets we got to, so we were all on the same page about it. And I just want to share that unfortunately, there's no public recording posted about it, but I want to share as a board, we all collectively did agree, these goals, these top 5 goals is what we want to see moving forward. And it's important to share because there has been a lot of PTSD, I always use PTSD in the past, where it hasn't been transparent of how the goals were chosen for previous superintendents. So I wanted to give that brief history. There is, documents where we all shared and circled our individual ideas and then how we all collectively came up with these top 5. So I wanted to just share that and put it, for those who are listening and paying attention and seeing how this process works, right? We talk about transparency. This is a little bit of it.
Thank you. Trustee Barone.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just going to put it like this. The appointed trustees have not been without a voice. The reason why we have the person that we have sitting here as our superintendent is because, don't look now, but the appointed trustees had a lot to do, even though we didn't have a vote, we had a lot to do with who got picked. Matter of fact, there's a lot of people out in the public who they notice we have a semblance of stability on this board, a semblance of getting things done, and kind of coincides with the appointment of these non-voting for right now members. We've also been a part of picking the parameters of this evaluation, and it sounds like we also have a voice. A lot of the things that get done. And for now to be, I'm kind of coiffed here, to say at least, to even hear a recommendation that we wouldn't have a part of this evaluation. I'm trying to speak in a controlled manner here, because the outrage that I'm feeling deep inside here is threatening to bubble to the surface. The state has already agreed with us, and despite there being lobbying to the contrary, they've decided that we're going to have a vote next year anyhow, which also coincides because I don't see I could be wrong, but I don't think our superintendent's going to be leaving any time into the next school year, which would kind of drag us into the following school year's evaluation. So, that said, I don't have a question. No, actually, I do have a question. I can't understand how, in any way, shape, or form, that would even be considered to be left off this evaluation.
Yeah, again, thank you. And let me just repeat that I apologize. I will say I probably misspoke in my remarks. I should have said, I do not know, with the question of 7 versus 11. It hasn't been discussed with me. I haven't considered it. Really, my answer should have been, if I can backpedal a little bit here, that's a decision for the board, number one. That's a decision that I believe you do want to go through attorneys, the attorney in terms of the contract and that kind of a thing. You want to talk to your superintendent about it, and the board needs to make that decision. As far as specifically balanced governance and your use of balanced governance, it does not matter whether you decide to have the 7 voting members or the 11, all the 11 members participate in the process. Either process works. There's not a upside or a downside to that. That's your decision to be made. I don't want to be presumptuous in making that decision for you. And the last thing that I want to remark on, this is to President Stevens' comments, that is that the procedures and the processes that I've outlined here are not affected in any way by your decision on that. So it's just a matter, the process will be engaged in the exact same way. It's just a question of whether I'm sending the evaluation process to all the board members or to the voting board members.
Thank you. Trustee Biasotti.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Ellsbury, how much time do we have when we are given the evaluation?
Yeah, typically we provide 2 weeks for you to respond to each of the sections. I can tell you that in the online surveying and rating tools that I utilize, it tells you how long it takes for board members to fill those out, and it averages 15 minutes for each of those. So it doesn't take a long time. So 2 weeks has been adequate.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to say thank you for your advice. I know it's on the record, and your words were very clear when you said it was your advice that under balanced governance, only 7 elected members conduct this evaluation. I wouldn't want you to be pressured to go against your own initial advice that all 11 of us appreciate and value. And again, I don't think we've ever seen a scenario where an evaluation was conducted by anyone other than the direct employer, and it was 7 of us that elected and hired our superintendent. It should remain that way, and unless something changes in the future, then we should abide by that. So thank you.
Thank you. But before I move on to Trustee Cavazos, I see Trustee Satori's on there. Go ahead, Trustee Satori.
Sorry, I turned it off instead of back on. So you were talking about ensuring that it comes from the entire board, which I understand the reasons and the process makes a lot of sense to me, which is also why we should all be involved. However, so when a process, so my question is, if a board member did not feel when you said you're giving the results back and we're going to vote on them, if someone did not feel at that point, though, that it was represented correctly or their viewpoint or had some contention, I think you spoke to that, but I just wanted to have you clarify that. And also, are there discussions about the narrowing? Can you clarify that? And where do those take place? Like, what is the platform? Or is it just that we're provided that and we vote, on it, or it's voted on? I was just unclear a little bit on what that process was.
Yeah, the rating scale is, and you have a sample of the rating scale that I utilize. It's worded like it is for specific reasons that are supported through the experience that I've had with boards. So that isn't something that is debatable. It's part of the process. In terms of the recommendations, and it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It's a typical rubric or like a typical Likert. You're going to be saying, I think the goals were met. I think the goals were not met. I think progress. So in terms of the recommendations for growth statements, two things. One is that's why I provide one-on-one to any time that a trustee wants to reach out to me because they're unclear about it. I'm happy to assist them in that. Secondly, I provide examples, and you see that in the sample that you have tonight. I provide examples of a growth statement. So those are the opportunities that you have. But I will say this too, that I will, in the process, always include every recommendation for growth. I will, at no point would I not include a recommendation for growth. It's just that I'm going to word it as a recommendation for growth.
And as you clarified, those were one-on-one. When you say those discussions, those were one-on-one. Those were not whole group. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dr. Ellsbury, I have a quick question. On the ratings, on the scores, when the final report is given, and we can all see it, is each item just going to show like an average, or will it show 11 or 7 numbers?
Yeah, what I do is provide a summary of the data, a summary average, and so it will show just a single number, which is an average of the ratings. Do you do anything to
show outliers. So let's say there's an item that the superintendent is rated, 4.0 across the board, but somebody gives her a 2. In that situation, obviously, that's going to drop the average down significantly, but it doesn't really, so when you give that average, it doesn't really tell the whole story. So I'm just wondering, like, when you're sharing that kind of data, how the whole story is presented.
I haven't seen that first, typically, where there's a huge disparity between the ratings on a superintendent. Generally, I would remark as a part of my comments when the report was delivered if there was a consistent outlier, but the report itself would not have individual ratings indicated. It would just be the average of the group. But I would say that, as can sometimes happen on a board, if there's a single individual board member, say, that feels very, very differently than the rest of their fellow colleagues, because in this case, there'll be at least 7, maybe 11 giving ratings, it washes itself out. The outlier doesn't have a dramatic numerical impact and on the final rating, and because of we're down to 4 categories and a descriptive rating, it doesn't fall outside of those 4 categories. And in other words, the average might drop by a few tenths of a number, but it's not going to move you from distinguished to proficient or down the scale. I've never seen that happen.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you. I wanted to go back, Dr. Ellsbury, to what you were talking about with growth statements, and sometimes it's really hard, to write those, and you're keeping your eye on the progress. I really appreciate you concentrating on that and making it clear that what we're doing here is not whether it's 25 activities that somebody got done, but the progress, and that we need to have a measurable way of tracking that with the data. So what I was going to ask you is that, as you're doing these individual consultations, and you gave us some samples in here, I think 1 or 2 samples of growth statements, would it be possible, if there are several trustees who are having issues with being able, I think it's what we want to avoid is editorializing, criticism, judgmental, or just personal opinion, but it wants to be a growth statement. Would that be something that there could be like a mini, I'm afraid to say this word before my colleagues look at me, a mini training on, even if it was virtual, or is that going to be included in the individual consultations?
Well, I would certainly be open to if more than one or a number of the board wanted some help on that. I will tell you, though, in my experience, that's never been necessary.
Okay.
I have, in fact, most of the time, no board member reaches out to me for assistance, and in a few rare cases, I've had one board member who has reached out, and we've talked it out, and then they've understood, how to write those statements. But if it came about, then I certainly would be open to that.
Thank you. And the only reason I asked is because it happens, quite frequently, unintentionally and non-maliciously on this board, where it turns out to be a criticism or a judgment, when really it should be something like we were talking about data. And so I wanted to make sure that this is something that we're focusing on. Thank you for your elaboration.
Thank you. Trustee Esparza-Staffergan?
So I do want to ask legal counsel, since we've been a part of the process from the very beginning, is there anything that would exclude us as appointed trustees from the process?
Mahogany Turfley, General Counsel. Unfortunately, that's not on the agenda right now, so that will be addressed, that can be addressed at a different time. What is on the agenda is whether or not to approve Dr. Ellsbury's recommendations on the evaluation cutoffs and the wording.
So then you're recommending that we should request perhaps an agenda item to talk about it specifically?
Or if you need a legal opinion, you could request a legal opinion.
Thank you for the clarity. That helps.
Welcome.
Dr. Ellsbury, I feel awkward for you. I apologize. I really do, because it feels like in full transparency, there likely were some conversations that were had about appointeds not being a part of the process. And I'm not asking you to say anything about that. But what I do want to remind, and I think Trustee Zamora mentioned it, about the way that appointeds became a part of the board. And unfortunately, with the previous leadership and the previous board members, they did take away our ability in policies to not have the ability to make motions. Municipalities sued the district. So it was a very unfortunate circumstance that even still to this day, that we are still fighting to represent our municipalities and to provide that balanced governance that we truly are a value add. And one thing I do want to just say as a comment is that the appointeds have different experiences from the electeds. And with those growth statements, we could potentially provide and value add. So I think that is something that is not being considered in this decision-making, but I already have the answer from legal, the two avenues that could be explored. But I do not want the municipalities to not have that ability to weigh in, and they are unaware of this because of the fact that we just found out today. Thank you.
And again, let me just reiterate, I don't recall a conversation about whether it should be the 7 or the 11. So I truly was speaking a little bit out of turn in saying I assumed it would be the 7. I shouldn't assume. So I apologize for that again. I think that's a decision that has to be made, again, as we've said before, by the board. I think this board has worked well together. I think you've been doing a fantastic job as your coach, your governance coach. I'm very proud of the work that you've done. And so I certainly, with respect, do not want to diminish the work that the appointed board members have done on this board. I think you've done a great job together. So sorry about kind of speaking out of turn, but I do think, but I do want to repeat, I've said this already, that the procedures and the practices that I've outlined are not affected by the decision on how many of you participate in those. And so hopefully that doesn't become a distraction for tonight's agenda item.
Thank you. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to get back on track. So with the recommendations of growth, I was trying to follow you. So you said that there would be a meeting with the board president and the superintendent to see what recommendations make the report, or could you clarify?
Yeah, no, it's the meeting that I mentioned is something that once the report is completed, the ratings or averages are set, the board has selected the recommendations for growth. That's already been determined by the board. Once the report is done, then I'm simply sharing that with the superintendent and the board president prior to it becoming a public document. That's all. It's just a courtesy item. Yeah.
Thank you.
Seeing nobody else in the queue, do we have any public comment for this item 3.04? No. Okay, I will entertain. I'm not. Come on up.
Thank you for letting me speak. Katrina Ivanov for the record. And I just wanted to say that I was listening to Mr. Baron comments and also the rest. And you guys are still part of the process, and by not being allowed to vote is not a big deal, in my opinion. And actually, I disagree with the legislature that was passed that is giving you the right to vote.
Ms. Ivanov, real quick, this is
Yes.
about 3.04.
Yes,
So 3.04,
for the-
hold on, let me speak. 3.04 is about discussion and possible action of the evaluation procedures and adoption of the performance terms and cutoff scores. So I know this item came up, but when the public comment item has to be about this agenda item. So
The discussion and procedures?
no, are you going to be speaking about the performance terms, cutoff scores, or evaluation procedures, not legislation?
Yes, the procedures. I would like the people that are not elected by the parents not to have a vote. They can still be part of the process the way they've been all these years. However, by letting those people that are not elected by the parents to have a vote is diluting the parents' vote. So that's what I said. He mentioned that they're gonna have votes pretty soon, and that's okay. We can fight on it on another end. But for now, whatever guys you do, and the gentleman also recommended that the people that already voted for the superintendent be the only ones that have a vote because they're the only one that truly represent the parents. They were not appointed, they were elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment on 3.04. I will entertain a motion to accept the performance terms and cutoff scores as presented. Trustee Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to motion to accept 3.04 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make clarification because there was two evaluation rating cutoffs. One was a state option and one was a mathematical
You're right, that's a very
option.
good point. So Trustee Dominguez, would you be willing to amend your motion to determine which option you would prefer for the ratings, the metrics? So you have the state option, which is this, and then you have the mathematical option, which is this. The terms are the same, so you can accept the terms as written, but the actual evaluation is either the mathematical or the state.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to amend my motion to motion to approve 3.04 as the mathematical option.
And the terms as is.
And the terms as is.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I second that motion.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Clarification, or if you want to call it a point of order, I believe you asked Trustee Dominguez to clarify whether she was, which of the options. Is her motion for 303 or 304? Because they are two separate ones. So I think I heard something different from what Trustee Bustamante Adams asked. So she is making a motion for 3.04, not 3.03.
I made a
It's
motion.
work, yes.
We're on 3.04.
Okay, all right, I just want to clarify that.
I'll state my motion again. I motioned for 3.04, the mathematical option on page 14 as presented.
Okay, that's good.
Motion passes. With that, before we open 3.05, do we have any other public commenters for 3.05? This item is the 2026 to 2027 Superintendent Evaluation, Adoption and Process of Evaluation. It is not public comment on items not listed. Great. I will no longer be receiving public comment cards on 3.05. With that, I will open it up to Dr. Alsbury for presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, President. This is a review of this next year's evaluation, the 2026-2027 evaluation. And you will be thankful, I'm sure, to note that this is the same procedures and criteria that I just reviewed for this past year, which means I don't feel the need to go in detail through every single one. I'll go quickly through these slides. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead and click.
Yeah, there we go.
Are you gonna, yeah, there we go. I think now it's working. No, it's not. Can we turn this to the slideshow presentation? Because it's, yeah, that's still not on presentation mode. Okay. All right, as we say, just to note that this is for next year, the 26-27. The cycle is the same. Today, we're making the same decision about adopting the processes and criteria. Those are the same as the ones that I just presented. The dates are just slightly different in this slide set. I want to point this one out, and that is that it would be September the 24th at that session of the board where the discussion and the ratings and the decision about what to focus in on for district strategic goals is made. It is anticipated, I believe, I'll defer to the superintendent. Yes, thank you that the new revised district strategic goal will be available at that time. And so then we'll be able to go ahead and make those choices. There would still be a mid-year performance in January. September, the final process would start in 2027. And again, the same as in the previous review, and these dates are here as well. The targets will be selected in the same way that I described in the previous section, where the superintendent would be asked to identify areas that they believe were critical for this next year to focus in on, but then the board would have the opportunity to select any of those targets that they wished and trying to narrow it down to 4 to 5 targets. The evaluation cutoffs and language, I'm making the same recommendation to utilize the same language, the same terms, the same cutoffs as what you just approved. And the final process would be identical. We're just 1 year ahead in terms of the process, which is laid on these slides. And then the final thing about the information coming to me and my providing a summary report is the same. So I'll conclude with that.
I'll kick it off. I have a question for you, Dr. Ellsbury. So we just approved, just now, the mathematical option. And I'm just wondering if we have the ability to, and I don't know that my colleagues would want to do this, but even table that decision. I'm interested to see how the mathematical option works. What if we get through this year, we go through that option, and maybe we as a board say, I don't know if we like that option. Maybe we want to try the other one. We won't know that, though, because this is our first time. So I'm just wondering if this is something that we have to do today, because I'm looking at your timeline, so I want to be considerate of that. How would that impact your timeline?
It doesn't impact the timeline. I think the question there really goes back to trying to be eminently fair to the superintendent so that they know what the cutoff is going to be, before getting into a school year. But in terms of the process, could that be modified later? It certainly could be, because we don't make the final decision, until September of 2027 is when the final kind of cutoffs would be decided. So doesn't affect the process, but I think the question goes back to the comfort level for your executive. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else for discussion? Trustee Barone.
Just to point out that this time next year, there will be 11 voting members. I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Trustee Biasotti?
Thank you, Madam President, and things do change in the future, so are you accepting a motion now?
Well, that depends. Trustee Cavazos, did you have a comment or?
I had a comment, not a second.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Trustee Biasotti. Trustee Cavazos?
I just also wanted to remind all of us that Dr. Alsbury led us in a very robust discussion. I believe we were at SECTA, I'm pretty sure, when we had that workshop, and he went to a lot of trouble and elaboration in explaining his experience from other boards as far as the rubric, the scoring rubric, and the mathematical possibilities. And I believe, and I obviously don't have my notes from that session with me right now, wish I did, but he explained how that was very fair-minded, not only to the trustees in being able to express a little bit more exactly, where they were going with that, but then that the overall summary and the equation would also be very fair to our one employee. So I would be kind of more inclined to kind of stay with that, because we did go to a lot of trouble to arrive at that conclusion. Just a comment.
And just a clarification, yes, these slides that you're seeing with those options and those cutoffs were taken directly from that session that you're alluding to. Those are the ones that we had that day.
Trustee Esparza Stoffergan.
Waiting on a motion.
So I think and I appreciate your point about fairness, because when we're looking at evaluation of anyone, people want to know in advance, what is going to be my performance rubric? So I would like to know, from your extensive experience with other school boards, have any of them switched to a different kind of scoring? And what could be the benefits and/or maybe unintended consequences if we did change it midway from one year to the next?
Yeah, no board has moved from the mathematical to the state option. I believe the reason for that is that it just doesn't seem fair-minded. If you have you'll have 11. If 6 vote, distinguished, and 5 vote, proficient, it only seems like it should lean to the distinguished, to what the majority thought. So because of that, as I've raised this question before boards who are currently using the state evaluation cutoff numbers, they've all decided that that's not fair. We should go to the mathematical version, and they've all stuck to that to date. I haven't had any go the opposite direction.
I think that is very valuable for us to really consider, and also for consistency. We don't want to change a rubric for any employee midway, and also for us to be able to measure the same metrics over year after year. We know the goals might switch and the targets will hopefully increase because we'll have growth, we'll have proficiency, but I would think that it would be unfair, so I would not be in favor of doing any switching.
Trustee Dominguez?
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to shoot for a motion if we were ready, but.
Well, we got Trustee Biassatti first, and I got public comment.
Okay.
Okay, before I entertain a motion, as I can see my colleagues are ready, we do have public comment. Ms. Binder, 3.05.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Ebert. So back in 2021, sitting in this boardroom, there was a change that happened without board vote in governance policy. And that huge change was the removal of the mid-year superintendent, whatever you call it, whatever you're calling it. Someone in this room stood by leadership and swore up and down that that change was not made universally, gaslit the heck out of a former trustee, putting back into the public perception that that trustee was toxic and created all this imbalance in the board, and we needed appointed trustees, and the mirrored facade of what was actually happening wasn't being discussed publicly, but someone else was being treated like absolute garbage. And that person in our community was not vindicated until this person sitting in the room with us today vindicated her sitting right here about a year and a half ago, whatever, when we rehired this person. And so hearing the conversation from 3.04 to 3.05, I want to give huge thanks for bringing the mid-year evaluation back. Because that was like the oh my God, they did do this. And then so in the furtherance of the conversation, look, I didn't approve of appointed trustees either. I was up there screaming up and down not to, but that was because I felt like nobody was truly watching what was happening with prior leadership. It wasn't this one rogue trustee, it was the leadership. I'm grateful for the appointeds that we have. You guys all know that. You've been great over the years. I love it. I honestly was disappointed. I thought you were getting a vote this July 1, and then I was reminded it's next year. Again, I don't approve how we got here, but we're here, and it has worked very efficiently for our community, for our staff, students, everybody, okay? So, but I want, as you guys move forward in this additional conversation, is to remember how 5 years ago, something got taken off the table, which triggered the look back at other things that were changed. One word being changed in your policies creates an entire new meaning for what you're actually seeking or looking for. And you guys know I've been following this very, very closely to try to help you make sure that did not happen again. But the one thing that you guys have not done as of right now, from the time of rehiring Alsbury to July 1, 2026, you have not taken a single power back for yourselves. Not one.
Okay, that concludes public comment for 3.05. I will entertain a motion. Trustee Biassatti.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to approve Agenda Item 3.05, the 2026-2027 Superintendent Evaluation, Adoption of Process for Evaluation.
Is she on there? Let's pause for one more. Come on up, Katrine. Sorry, you were right. I was wrong.
It's very short. Thank you for letting me speak. Katrina Ivanov for the record. I would like for you guys to entertain new procedures. When you have a motion for discussion, like right now, you ask us for public comments on the front, but I think it should be on the back after the presentation is done, because even if we read, it's not the same as the expert speaking, and then you guys asking questions. So we have better clarification of what's going on when we're here and hearing it, and then we can comment afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Biassatti, can you restate your motion, please?
Sure. Motion to approve Agenda Item 3.05, 2026 to 2027 Superintendent Evaluation, Adoption of Process for Evaluation.
Trustee Biassatti, you have to choose an option. So the mathematical option is presented, as is the state option.
I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item 3.05 with the mathematical option for the 2026-2027 superintendent evaluation, adoption of process for evaluation.
Thank you. I have a second.
I would like to,
Trustee Dominguez.
I would like to second the motion.
Awesome, let's vote. Motion passes. And with that, before I open 4.01, do I have anybody else that needs to sign up for public comment on items that are not pertaining to this agenda? Okay, I will no longer be accepting public comment cards. Let's get it kicked off. 4.01, Elena Fabian.
Hello. Good afternoon, Madam President, trustees, and Superintendent Ebert. My name is Elena Fabian. In May, this board unanimously adopted Governance Policy GP2, committing every trustee to serve all students, avoid activism or special interests, and avoid political or ideological positions that may polarize groups of constituents. The policy also recognizes that our community includes people of different races, religions, cultures, genders, and sexual orientation, and calls on the board to create a climate of caring, respect, and valuing of all people. Today, I'm asking whether those standards apply equally to every trustee. The reason I ask is because publicly available records, which I will give to you in a minute, show that Trustee Lorena Biassatti, and I'm addressing, I'm identifying the trustee only because these are the public facts given rise to my governance
I
question.
understand that, but you have to address us as a board, not as individuals.
I am
We're
addressing
not
the
doing
board.
that.
I'm addressing the board as a whole. But I have to give the facts of why I'm raising this governance policy question to be
You can
applied.
raise the question of governance by talking to us as a board.
I
You do
am
not
addressing the
have to
board as a-
name individuals, especially if you have things for us that are in front of you that you're going to give us, then there's really no need to do that.
Well,
So
for the
please
public
address us as a
record, I
board,
am.
Ms.
Thank you.
Fabian.
She incorporated the Children's Advocate. My Children's Advocate served as its original president, later as secretary, and remains its registered agent. The Articles of Incorporation list the organization's purpose to promote the welfare of children, to fund projects relating to said purpose. Today, however, that organization publicly endorses political candidates and has published messaging opposing what it calls social justice infiltration in public schools. Members of our community, including LGBTQ students, families, and educators, have expressed that this messaging makes them feel targeted or unwelcome. This is not about anyone's First Amendment rights. All trustees, like every American, has the right to express their views. This is about governance. GP2 states that trustees should avoid activism or special interests, avoid political or ideological positions, and may polarize groups of constituents, and serve the needs of all students, not the interest of any particular movement or ideology. So my question is simple. When credible concerns are raised that a trustee's outside leadership role may conflict with the governance standards this board adopted, will GP2 be applied equally or only when it is politically convenient? I respectfully ask the board president to consider whether this matter warrants the progressive response process outlined in GP2. If these policies are to build public trust, they must be applied consistently to every trustee every time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jessica Diaz. Please state your name for the record.
Jessica Diaz for the record. Good afternoon, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen. Superintendent Sieber, I'm going to try to not get emotional. It's not working. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jessica Diaz. I was a teacher with CCSD between the years of 2017 and 2023. I was unsure if I would address this, but today I'm speaking to the district's decision not to rehire me. During my first year, a claim was made against me by a student that resulted in a letter of discipline. Due to time constraints, I won't speak to the entire event, but I will say after an investigation, no evidence was found to prove anything had occurred. I was told signing the letter was not an admission of guilt, but simply acknowledgement that I received a copy. I followed my union representative's instructions and requested the letter be removed from my personnel file after the required wait time. I cannot be certain because Human Resources cannot confirm the reason I am not being rehired, but I believe that the letter may still be in my file, which would mean I am inadvertently lying on the application. I stepped away from teaching because a surgical procedure I had in December of 2022 left me both mentally and physically unhealthy. At the end of that school year, I was not putting forth my best effort as an educator, and I knew continuing would only negatively affect my students and my team, so I left, hoping that time away would allow me the opportunity to heal and return to what I knew I was meant to do. I do not enjoy self-promotion, so this is difficult for me, but I love what I do. And I know I'm a good teacher. After my first year, I had 5 successful years at Arturo Cambero Elementary School, which is downtown and rough. In my first year there, 80% of my homeroom students tested proficient in reading portion of the SBAC. So sorry. Students who I was told would walk out, not listen, and were the worst group became students who refused to go to lunch because they were writing. Requested I come to morning recess early and have returned as middle schoolers simply to say hi. They became my kids. Every year, new students became my kids, and I became something consistent, someone they could count on being there. Each year, I built those relationships with some of the toughest kids, and each year, I saw growth. So sorry. While I know a position this year may not be possible, I'm asking to be given another opportunity to return to the classroom. I want to get back to what I know I do best whenever one may be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Olivier. After Kathy will be Jane Audette, if you'd like to come to the front. And please state your name for the record.
Yes, Kathy Olivier for the record. Good afternoon, Superintendent Ebert, President Stevens, and trustees. I am a retired member of the community with affiliations with WARJ, White Activists for Racial Justice, and other nonprofit organizations. While most of my career was in the computer software development industry, I also was an 8th grade teacher in Texas and founded a couple of 501c3 nonprofit educational organizations in Atlanta. I am speaking as an individual. First of all, I would like to compliment the board and the superintendent for being receptive to public testimony and acting on suggestions from the community. I am speaking today about a concern that there are not more Black people in administration in CCSD. The Las Vegas Association of Black School Educators in their Black student agenda states, effective district leadership requires executive level perspectives that reflect institutional knowledge, community trust, and implementation experience. To strengthen continuity, capacity, and system-wide effectiveness, CCSD will ensure diverse representation on the superintendent's cabinet that reflects the district's communities. There is more said, but for time, I am in support of a beautiful acronym that has been maligned in recent years, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, based on the intent of our country's Declaration of Independence and Constitution, which I have read many times. That is why I call DEI a beautiful acronym. Statistically, for the 24-25 school year, Black students made up about 16% of the total students in CCSD. According to the CCSD website, the executive leadership team consists of 22 members with only one Black person. This is a 4.5% inclusion rate. The extended leadership team is better. It consists of 26 members with only one Black man, which that's only 3.8%, but 5 Black women, 19.2%. According to the Southern Black Educators Initiative, the percentage of all licensed Black professionals for the 25-24 school year in CCSD was 7.3%. Based on these statistics, I'm encouraging more representation of Black people on the executive leadership team and as licensed professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jane Audette. After Jane will be Anna Binder.
Good afternoon, Madam President, trustees, and Superintendent Ebert. Jane Audette, member of WARG, speaking as an individual. WARJ. Woo. So I want to talk about the School Justice Collaborative in CCSD. It was brought to the board, I think, on June 11th by Mr. Kevin McPartland as part of the board presentation on student perceptions of safety. It got me thinking and it got me looking. During that presentation, Mr. McPartland had indicated that efforts are underway to add Henderson PD and North Las Vegas Police Departments to the collaborative. This is going to add additional institutional police influence in our discipline procedures in CCSD, so it's important. Today, at this board meeting, we were presented with our candidate for Chief of School Police, who is coming from Metro, not from CCSD Police. And this represents an additional expansion of that very same police institutional influence from Metro into our CCSD Police Department. Again, something to note. The lack of vetting of the candidates by the board is concerning to us at WARJ. And simply because all of these things do allow for additional institutional influence from Metro. These two related expansions of that influence might lead us to examine the actual framework of the School Justice Collaborative membership. At the meeting when it was talked about, Trustee Bustamante Adams touted the collaborative as national best practice. That would be true. There is, however, also another model that's considered to be best practice, and a number of districts use something called the independent oversight model. That has a different aspect of integrating external civil rights watchdog groups, nationally recognized, as signing members with voting rights and public data access. The collaborative model indeed has many strengths, which include moving policy changes smoothly and efficiently, but it is also subject to institutional bias and its own self-protection. Given evidence that's plentiful of police and justice system bias, perhaps a purely governmental and provider collaborative does not truly support an increased sense of trust and safety for all of our students. Before CCSD adds additional institutional police influence in our School Justice Collaborative.
Thank you, Ms. Audette.
Thank you.
Ms. Binder, you're good? Okay. Kimmy Lindsay. After Kimmy will be Tamara Morris.
Good afternoon and not good evening this time. I'm Kimmy Linsday. I had to write down notes this time so I don't miss a good point. So James O'Keefe Media Group exposed Gunderson Middle School teacher Christopher Siegel in an undercover interview as a groomer. Alex Stein was here last meeting to talk about this. On camera, he admitted to breaking CCSD policy 5138, which requires parental involvement through a gender support team before staff may use preferred pronouns. This man betrayed the trust of parents and blatantly betrayed the trust here. He told all this to the investigator. It was incredible. And you guys can watch it for yourselves. Absolute disregard for parents and policies. Furthermore, this guy is an English and drama teacher, yet he admits that he focuses the classroom conversations around race, sexual identity, policing, and systemic racism. And from what I read, he was the chair of the school's DEI committee. He's an ideological activist and not an educator. We need more educators in the classrooms. He should have been focusing on English and drama. Furthermore, his use of emotional blackmail of his students and his behavior is straight up grooming behavior. You can Google what grooming behavior is. It's a deliberate manipulative process in which an adult builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or a vulnerable person. All of this Siegel did in order to talk about his sex life with 11-year-olds and to have them talk to him about who they want to have sex with. That's disgusting and shouldn't be in the school. So the Supreme Court, just so you know, the Supreme Court ruled Mahmoud versus Taylor, 6-3, ruled that parents have the right to opt out of LGBTQ curriculum, which Siegel admits is the focus in his classroom. And everything, supposed to be English and drama. No, he focuses on LGBTQ materials and tries to get them to come out to him. He's grooming our kids. He violated parents' First Amendment rights, because we have the right to opt out of that, due process and free exercise, by interfering with our ability to guide our own children's development and mental health decisions. Schools cannot systematically exclude parents, the primary protectors of children's best interest, from these sensitive matters. Furthermore, that interview or the meeting wasn't aired. It's not on YouTube. It didn't go. I'm very, very concerned that a famous YouTuber guy comes and exposes some just nasty, horrible stuff, and it's still not even on CCSD's YouTube website. So that's suspicious, and I checked. This one's live, so that's good. But please, this guy needs to be fired. He's not doing his job. He's grooming children.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. Tamara Morris. Please state your name for the record. After Tamara is Ms. Tanya Atterbury.
Hi, I'm Tamara Morris, to Madam President and to the Board of Trustees. I'm just summarizing to Kimmy's statement, and I want to add my input to this. We need to save our children and in our education system. And I have two cases here. The first one is Chris Siegel, who was who is still teaching for the drama and English course. And he's violating the policy 51.38, using kids' pronoun and grooming behavior of kids. This is moving away from our tradition of education. Therefore, we need to terminate this teacher. And there's another case, which is Mohamed and Taylor, who is also violating parental rights, First Amendment rights. That should be opted out of LGBTQ materials, which is conflicts with our religious beliefs. And in 2025, Supreme Court ruled out a 6-3 rule of Mohamed and Taylor case that public schools must allow parents to opt their elementary-aged children out of classroom instructions involving LGBTQ and inclusive books. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Atterbury. You're up. And after Ms. Atterbury is, again, Ms. Ivanoff.
Good? Okay. Tanya Atterbury, for the record, CCSD retired. I was investigated with the assumption I was being discriminatory on my personal social media. I was told that I should not be using the term indoctrination. I was eventually cleared of any wrongdoing. I have watched fellow educators who have been accused of racism or the many phobias with the presumption of guilt and having to prove their innocence. It is belittling and affects an educator's self-assurance, integrity, emotional stability, and is personally and professionally degrading. I actually have signed one of the letters that a previous speaker had just spoken of. And if it's the presumption that they are guilty by signing that letter that says that I am receiving the information, then there is a problem. Perceived guilt and blatant guilt represent two distinct levels of evidence and interpretation. Perceived guilt is subjective, relying on circumstantial evidence, behavior, or suspicion, while blatant guilt is objective, obvious, and supported by direct evidence. The problem is the system. I am sure that the actions of the teacher at Gunderson were done over a long period of time, but must not have been addressed by fellow educators or the administration. I have to ask why. Why is it being exposed on a national level before any action taken when there is a clear violation of Policy 5138? I have to ask if educators and even administrators are being silent because of the fear of being accused of being discriminatory, bullies, or racist. Is it the fear of retaliation? They do not want to be accused of being unethical, immoral, or unjust. When blatant violations of policies are not held accountable, it is a system problem. If the person pointing out the violation is labeled as difficult, antagonistic, and an anti-team player, then you will end up with the results we have seen where CCSD is in the news for being incompetent of enforcing their own policies. Please put a stop to the system that is penalizing perceived guilt and incentivizes silence against penalizing blatant guilt. Remove the fear factor for educators and administration because they may feel that they are perceived as the problem when addressing blatant violators of policies. If you flip this script, then the transparent change that we are all asking for and what you have promised us will happen. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ivanoff. After Ms. Ivanoff will be Colette Seaton.
Board members of CCSD, I'm Katrina Ivanov, mother of 2 teenagers and a parent who is done watching this district fail our children. I'm here with one message: protect our kids. If this investigation into Christopher Segal does not end with immediate firing, you will lose the trust of every parent in this district. We, the parents, are watching, recording, and organizing. By dragging your feet, by protecting this groomer who was caught on camera coaching 11-year-old children on their sexual identities behind their parents' back, you're sending the wrong message. You're empowering pedophiles and groomers. You're telling predators that CCSD will look the other way when adults cross boundaries with minors. That message is loud, is dangerous, and it needs to end today. Now let's talk about money. You settle lawsuit after lawsuit for millions of dollars, millions of taxpayer dollars, our dollars. You pay out massive settlements when children are harmed. Then you move on because it is not your money and it's not your children. If every one of those millions came out of the administrator's pocket, you would be firing these liabilities immediately. You would vet every single adult who stepped near our children with extreme caution. You would have zero tolerance. But since it's our money and our children, you do not seem to care enough to clean house. We pay these teachers to teach our children's basics. We do not pay them to coach our children on coming out or pushing sexual agenda without our knowledge or consent. We're demanding you fire them, all of them. We, the parents, insist right now that you launch a full, transparent, independent investigation into every single school at the CCSD. Root out every groomer masquerading as a teacher. And when you find them, and you will find more than one, you must fire them on the spot. No administrative leave that turns into quiet rehiring into other schools. No second chances, immediate termination. Zero tolerance. They should be, figuratively speaking, branded for life and not be able to work with children in any capacity. Our youth is not your social experiment. To the current incumbents and their opponents, I extend an open invitation right now to come to my radio show at their convenience and let the community hear your solutions. Board members, please do your job. Fire Christopher Segal, investigate every school, Protect our children. The time for excuses is over. The time for action is now. Thank you. And I deemed it very serious
Okay.
because I would
Up
have.
next, we have Ms. Seaton. After Ms. Seaton, we have Elishiba Dalal. Elishiba. Did I say your last name right? Ah, all right, well, you're next. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Board. I'm back here today again. I'm just going to reiterate what she says and what Kimmy says. There's so many mothers that are coming up and, you don't like me to talk. I understand that. You know why you don't like me to talk? It's because I tell the truth. And the truth is on facts, on money, and on the education. Our children are not getting educated. They're not. They're not, they're passing, but they're barely passing. And you already know the situation within the school district. We sat here for an hour listening about the evaluation of your position. I would like to know, how does that impact our children's education? And can we have the report on all of you guys' opinion about it, public forum? I mean, why can't we have that? I'm not understanding why we don't have we get this meeting, but nothing gets done. We hear what you guys do. You're still working on the clock here. We're sitting here watching it while this guy gets paid for what he did. He's a consultant that you guys hired. You guys did this on the low and low without us. And at the same time, we got to sit here and hear the messages of what you didn't get done. In the end of all of it, I don't see any results. I don't see any change. I mean, it's still the same. You still are pushing agendas that separate people, still pushing agendas to identify people out of this and identify this, and they have more rights of this, and everybody has more rights of that. But what does that do for our children's education? Is it making them better? And family engagement, nobody even wants to come. How many parents are in here tonight? I mean, stand up. How many? That success for our children, and I was a stay-at-home mom, also ran several different businesses from home, but seeing the school district just kind of pass the buck every year it's disheartening to me, because it's our families we're talking about. Does anybody care about their neighbors? Does anybody care about their next door neighbor? Does anybody ask anybody how anybody's doing? We have children that are going mental right now. I sat with the state last week about this. They said that. They said the school district is not doing their job, and that's a fact. $9 billion, I don't understand. 80% of it's spent on administration, and we sit here as a public to hear how you guys do it, and nothing changes in the classroom. That you hire teachers that commit crimes, yet you don't do the backgrounds on them, and then you pass the buck again. And then you get national news. Is that what you guys want? Because you will be. I'm going to report it to the top of the Department of Education of what you guys do, and I'm going to make sure you guys get audited all the way back to 2019. Financially, from COVID, who got incentivized as the trustees, from all of it. So, thank you so much, but there's going to be a change.
Thank you. Up next, we have Elishaba. And then it will be Grace Trujillo to close us out.
Good afternoon. Fellow parents, educators, and community leaders, my name is Elishiba Delode. Thank you, Superintendent. Good morning, Clark County members. We are here because our children's rights and developing minds must be protected above all else. Parents have the fundamental God-given right to guide their sons and daughters through childhood, not schools acting in secret. Clark County School District Policy 5138 requires parental involvement in any gender support plan for students exploring gender issues. It calls for family engagement. That's the key, family engagement. Written requests and team decisions that respect parents as the primary guardians of their children. Yet this policy was violated when a teacher, Christopher Siegel, admitted to secretly using preferred names and pronouns with students, coaching young middle schoolers on identity matters, and deliberately hiding it from parents. This is unacceptable. Children's ages 11 to 14 are still forming their sense of self. Their brains and emotions are not ready for adult-level conversations about sexuality, gender transition, or keeping secrets from mom and dad. Schools should partner with families, not undermine them. When educators bypass parents, they rob families of their authority, confuse impressionable young minds, and put children at risk during the most vulnerable years of development. Parents' rights are children's rights. We know our kids best, their needs, their struggles, their strengths. No teacher, administrator, or policy should insert itself between us and our children. Transparency is not optional. It is essential for trust and safety. We demand full enforcement of Policy 5138 as written, with real parental consent required. We call for accountability, an end to any secret social transitions in our schools. Our priority must be protecting innocence, supporting healthy development, and restoring parents as the ultimate decision makers in their children's lives. Together, let us stand firm, Parents United for our children's minds, hearts, and future. Thank you.
Grace, you're up next. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Grace Trujillo. I come here because I'm a parent of 3. I can brag about what I finished. You know, I have a higher education. I'm part of the Honor Society of Sigma Theta Tau in nursing. I have done tremendous projects in Ventura County, as well in LA County. Coming here in the U.S., it's an insult to me to hear that I need, based on my skin color, that I need help to be appointed or be put in a position without my merit. I think that's an insult, because I've done that. I'm an immigrant. I have families who are in trans, gay community. But one thing that stick to me is they told me, speak the truth, no matter what. That's what love is, speaking the truth. It hurts, but it's not. And I'm asking you, I'm not gonna repeat what they said, but I'm asking you, what is your legacy? Because everything we speak here is all dead without implementing it. Your legacy stands that when you pass today, that you have done something for Clark County. Me as myself, I cannot do it alone as a parent. And I've seen the struggles, and the parents don't want to speak up because they're afraid, and they tell me, you go speak, Grace, for us. You guys were putting in there, and I have high hopes that you guys can do something. And just remove all your pride and remove all your differences and unite to make a change in Clark County, so that every student here who graduates will say, yeah, I'm proud to be a graduate of CCSD. And how do we do that? Look at each of the kid as a child, not like their identity, because they need to be taught education. They need that right, so that when they graduate, they can be somebody that they can work, they can apply, and be a citizen. Don't stop the cycle, you know, because it's breaking down every kid here in Clark County. And so I urge you, I have high hopes that the board here will do something, not for the special interests, but because you guys have the heart to really make something different for all the kids here in Nevada. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. With that, that concludes 4.01. I will open 5.01, which is upcoming meeting announcements. Actually, our next meeting is a work session, and it's taking place here at 4 p.m. today. So there you go. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Trustee Cavazos.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Trustee Dominguez.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to second the motion.
Let's vote. Thank you. Motion passes. We are adjourned.